Flamio Hotman, we finally got to see what live-action Kyoshi looks like up close, in statue form at least. You see, Netflix released a new trailer for their live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender yesterday with a few new scenes and a few we've already seen, but from slightly different angles. So let's break them down together in this video, and I'll talk about another community comment that's been doing the rounds this week, seemingly getting people worried. I'm hoping we can make this more of a positive video though, rather than all those negative videos from all those other creators in the last few weeks, which in fairness to my fellow Avatar YouTubers, that stuff is more coming from people that don't really understand or watch Avatar. They're kind of just popping up for the views around the controversy. No hating on them by the way, that's just their job. But you and I do this because we love Avatar. So let's get started with this breakdown of the new trailer, and you'll get to see some of the cool new scenes, and I'll try and explain what I think we're seeing. So it starts with Aang suddenly waking up. This has got to be near the start of the series after he comes out of the ice sphere and he's brought back to the water tribe by Sokka and Katara. Just to touch on something Jabbar Rashani said, who's the executive producer, director and VFX supervisor for the live action series, he essentially said for a lot of the scenes they would basically watch the animated scenes picture in picture with the live action scenes and then use that to map out the live action scene to be just like the animation. So if you take that context and then let's look at this scene side by side with the animation, you can see they're almost identical. Now I'm just highlighting this because I know a lot of people out there are worried that this Netflix Avatar series is going to completely ignore the animation, but there are lots of little scenes like this where if you look at them side by side, it's clear they're not just completely ignoring the animation, at least not in some of the scenes that we've seen so far. We then see Aang step out of the hut, and we get to see that shot from the previous full trailer where you can see Katara and the whole Southern Water Tribe. Clearly it's a lot more built up than the animation was. Following that, we then get Aang and Sokka. Presumably it's just after this scene where Aang comes out of the sphere. In this extra bit we're seeing Sokka asks Aang who he is. And I love how Gordon responds here. It might just be me, but I get massive Aang vibes just by the way he says, "I'm Aang." So props to Gordon for his acting in that scene. It then goes on to show more of Katara's waterbending, which we have seen a snippet of this scene before, but now we get to see a little bit more, and I think it's really cool to see them goofing around a little bit. You get to see Katara and Aang actually having fun, just like kids would. Following that, we then get our first proper look at Gran Gran, and we even get to hear her talk, and I like how wise she sounds, just like you'd expect from Gran Gran. Now touching on the structure, if I pause it here, look at the background behind Gran Gran. You can see they've taken the structural idea of the tents from the original animation and they've kind of combined it with the concepts of these igloos to form what I think is a nice combination of something new in the form of the igloo, but maybe a little bit of that pullover from the animation in those kind of bone-like wooden structures that you can see supporting the igloos. It then goes on to show the Kyoshi statue, which I mentioned at the start of the video. Obviously this is set on Kyoshi Island, and if I pause it for a moment, I'll touch on something the showrunner Albert Kim said. He said they've changed the rules for when and how Aang goes into the avatar state, because obviously in the animated show, he did it quite a lot in season 1, but maybe not so much in season 2 or 3. So the Netflix series is seemingly going to try and reduce how much Aang goes into the avatar state, but also tweak the rules a little bit. Now, Albert Kim didn't specifically say what the new rules are, but judging by what we've seen in most of the trailers, it seems to be he goes into the avatar state when he's interacting with the spirit world, and seemingly more specifically when he's interacting with his past avatars. As you can see in this Kyoshi clip, it seems like he's interacting with Avatar Kyoshi, and that sends him into the avatar state. We then move on to see a few familiar shots that we've seen in previous trailers. Following that, we get our first shot of Aang properly flying on his glider. I'm assuming based on the background this is set in the Southern Air Temple when he's flying around. There's then a smattering of other clips that we've kind of seen before we get to the scene where Momo lands on Sokka's head and the cast have that little chuckle. Honestly, the more I see of Ian Owsley as Sokka, the more I believe this guy really is a real life Sokka. And that pretty much rounds out the new trailer. It wasn't as long as the full trailer we got, but there were definitely some new little clips in there which was really nice to see. And you can certainly see more of Aang and how he does have a lot more light-hearted fun in some of these clips. And at that point, let's tie it into that community comment I mentioned at the start of this video. You see, Albert Kim said this, and if I summarize this whole thing, essentially he's saying they've made Aang a little bit more focused to getting to the Northern Water Tribe and his recognition of what he needs to achieve. And really that means they won't be doing side quests as much for Aang, things like trying to ride the giant elephant koi near Kyoshi Island. Now people took this to mean Aang is no longer a fun-loving kid, but instead a serious robot, not too dissimilar to the version of Aang in that movie we don't talk about. Obviously though, from this trailer you can see that's not quite true. And if we look at another thing Albert Kim said about the core DNA and the characteristics of the team avatar that we know and love will be pretty much the same in the live action adaptation as it was in the animation. So I think it's safe to say that although people might be worried about hearing this first part about changing Aang's plan, there's certainly a lot of evidence to show that in terms of Aang's character, it's not going to change him too much. Does that mean this is all going to be perfect? Obviously it's too early to say. So for now, let's try and keep looking on the bright side. I think there's still lots of positives to be had if you go back and watch all the trailers and think about how they relate to the animation. Honestly, there are so many parallels you can draw in a positive way. So hopefully this is all a good thing. I'll show you this final Albert Kim quote just to show you that he says, "This is pretty much everything you've been wanting in a live action Avatar adaptation." So let's end on that positive note. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.